our live stream capability by going live with Mohave, the desert tortoise, and of course Melissa Toffelmoyer, our ambassador program manager. Melissa, you want to tell us a little bit about Mohave?
Sure. So Mohave, or Mohave desert tortoise, is our state reptile. And the reason why he is non-releasable is they actually found him wandering Mendocino, which is really far from the Mojave Desert.
Right.
We suspect he was taken from the wild and raised as a pet.
Mm-hmm.
Can't go back into the wild because one, reptiles can carry stuff back into the wild that would affect that population, and also we don't know where his territory is.
And he'd have to return, technically he should have
return.
returned to his territory, yeah.
Right, or else if we just were to put him anywhere in the desert, it would disrupt that ecosystem as far as predator-prey relationships.
Right, and there's probably another desert tortoise that already has that territory. It's funny because people think that taking an animal and relocating him is a humane thing to do. But actually, it's incredibly cruel because you end up placing the animal that you've relocated into someone else's territory. So you're restricting those resources. They always end up in fights.
Right.
They always end up, most of the time, in the vast majority of cases, animals that have been relocated to a territory that isn't their own end up dead because they don't know where the food and water sources are. They don't know where a place is to sleep, and they've got somebody that already lives there, freaking out and attacking them and doing what they would do, if an animal had come into their territory. So yeah, it's an interesting thing, but exactly. So we couldn't send him back. Look at the watermelon.
And he loves watermelon.
He does. How old is he?
He is 67, we suspect. He's about 67.
67 years old. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, they probably can live to be 80, maybe longer. And they age real slow. The reproductive rate of them is really slow too, 15 to 20 years before they're ready to find a mate and raise little tortoises out of the egg there.
Which is one of course, the main reasons that this guy is a threatened species. I'm going to move around here so we have the light on him better, if I can make it work here.
So the threats that he would face in the wild, in the Mojave Desert, would be habitat loss, believe it or not, crows and ravens.
Sure.
Being brought into that habitat by us humans. We are developing that habitat, and we're bringing all of those ravens and crows with us.
Yep, they move where the water is, and as we've infiltrated the desert, sorry, this is a terrible video because I keep trying to move around and get the better light. As we've infiltrated the desert, those animals have been able to come closer and closer to the habitat of the desert tortoise, and yeah.
And roads, we're building roads in there, so habitat fragmentation, it doesn't matter that we put a road through his habitat, he still has to cross it.
True.
And in the desert, obviously, the speed limits are much more, 75 miles an hour, so if you're cruising along at that speed, you're not going to be able to stop in time, or maybe not even see tortoise crossing the road. And then also, we like to do a lot of recreational trail riding, and we can collapse their burrows, and these guys spend about 90% of their time in the burrows, which is also why you can see that their front legs here look like a shovel, and they dig down. And the burrows are important not just for the desert tortoise, but also for other species. They can share their burrow with rodents and rattlesnakes.
I love that fact. That's one of my favorite desert tortoise facts, is that and he actually will have dug the burrow, right? And the rattlesnake decides to come in.
Yep.
Yeah, so you have your desert tortoise in there sharing space with a rattlesnake.
Yeah, and he's got this real tough skin too. Spending 90% in the burrow, he doesn't have to, only ventures out during the season. Of course, they can do a really cool adaptation, which is because the desert is so arid and don't have a lot of opportunities for waters, that they can hold on to their bathroom for a whole year.
Wow! So he really seriously only goes to the bathroom once a year?
Yeah, he can. About 40% of his internal organs is bladder.
Okay.
Bladder makes up 40%. And so what happens is the adaptation, it draws the water from the urine and then just keeps on recycling.
Oh, interesting. Isn't that cool? I'd be interested in seeing a diagram of that. We actually don't we have a tortoise diagram somewhere?
We do.
Yeah.
And actually, Mohave had surgery last year, and he actually got bladder stones.
That's right. And that was the second time that had happened.
Yes.
Yeah, we have a very generous donor that helped us pay for his surgery, which we're so grateful
huge.
for.
They were
Thank you, Terry.
Bigger than a quarter.
Wow.
So you had two of them, and so
You're
we
such
got
a
those
handsome
removed, and we looked after him, and tube feeded him and everything so that he could recover. He is a herbivore, so there's about 43 different types of plants in the desert that he can consume. We can't obviously offer that variety here. We do grow some food for him. We have lettuce, we have dandelion greens. You saw him eat the watermelon, that's one favorite, but it doesn't have a real high nutritional content.
Sure.
And we want to limit the amount of sweets that he gets, so to speak.
Right. Well,
Sugars
it's like
and-
with anyone, we should eat the stuff that's good for us and
The
only
stuff
have
that's
treats
good for
occasionally.
us, yes. We want to keep him healthy and just so that he can go on educating the public for years to come.
Yeah.
So, but he's a great ambassador. His shell is sensitive because the spine is infused here.
Oh,
That's the shell,
yeah.
So he feels that when we touch him.
I always say that it's sort of like touching the back of your fingernail.
Yes,
So it's a
yes.
hard surface, but it's
Very
got a
hard.
lot of nerve tissue underneath, so he definitely knows when you're touching him. Does he like it?
Yes, there are certain parts of him that he likes to be touched, like, for lack of a better word, on the back of the shell here.
Back of the shell feels
Yeah,
good?
the back
Okay,
of the
sounds
shell
good.
Feels good. Underneath the shell feels good for him. Because he is a threatened species, you might have seen the little license plate. I call it the license plate.
Oh yeah, he has a
on the
license
back.
plate on the back, and that's to indicate his status as a non-releasable tortoise, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and if for some reason, let's say we had to evacuate or he got somehow loose or something happened and they found him, they could tell exactly where he came from.
That's interesting, sure.
And he's a male, and the reason we know he's a male is because he has this little horn right here. It's called a gular horn,
Okay.
and all the other males have that as well. And what they use that to fight against other males for territory and for the females.
Flip each other over, right?
Yeah, and they flip each other over.
That's hardcore.
Which is very hardcore, and they're very aggressive about it. I thought they'd be kind of gentle doing that, but they're really tough. And interesting thing, when they flip over, they can right themselves. But a couple things happen. When they flip over, they can be very vulnerable to predators,
Sure.
but their lungs are on top.
Oh, so
when
it's
you
hard to breathe.
Right, so when you flip them over, you have all those other organs that are compressing that down, so it's hard for them to breathe.
Isn't that interesting? So if you see a turtle or a tortoise flipped over, that you want to help him flip back over,
Yeah,
right? Yeah, that's
absolutely.
interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like somebody standing on our chest, and
Oh, it
just
sounds
having-
terrible, Mo.
Oh yes. But yeah, they can flip each other back, or they can flip over, but
It's probably hard for him.
it's hard for them. So you definitely want to help them when that happens. But it's that's basically when they're fighting. That's how they tell who the winner is.
Right? That makes sense.
Is the one that's
Stays on his
right
feet.
side up.
Sure. Seems like a high bar, a low bar, but there it is.
Yeah.
Awesome, Melissa. Thank you so much. This has been so fun. Great to see you. Great to see Mohave. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Let me figure out how to end my live stream here. Yep.